I've been wrong, and I guess you have been right. I've been wrong, and I guess you have been right. I've been gone so long, I can't see the morning light. But when I come walking down that road tonight, please turn on your porch light. Turn on your porch light. It took me a while to find that song because it mentions a light and walking down a road. I'm Alabama Annie with another episode of Stories and Songs for you. And you're going to hear a tale today about the roundhouse. It was a structure that my son Chas and I and several friends built over the years to hang out in the woods and enjoy. But a storm in 2020 took it when some irresponsible loggers knocked down 2 trees on top of it after a major storm that it had survived. But it's gone now. What's done is done. But I had a lot of interesting experiences in the roundhouse. One of them in particular is the tale you're going to hear today. It's about a night that a friend of mine and I went up to stay in the woods. And it was late fall, I think. And it was chilly, so we had a campfire that night. And then, later on, something happened. One night several years ago, a friend of mine and I were in the forest behind the house, sleeping in a cabin we called the roundhouse. Outside the cabin was a big fire pit. We had loaded up with wood and had a nice fire going since it was cold in late fall. We cooked a good meal and sat around talking for a while and then got ready to turn in for the night. We banked the fire and put away the leftover food and brought our sleeping bags out. Now, the roundhouse was a 5-sided structure with wooden sides that came up about 4 feet, and above that was screen. There were 3 bunks inside, each connected to a wall, so that if you were to sit up in bed in the night, you could look out across the forest. On the front side of the structure was a solid wall with a door leading to a small stoop, but on the other 4 sides it was screen and wood only. Several trails were visible from inside the cabin. There was one coming up from the trail leading to the house, and another that ran into a nearby clearing at an angle, and one that ran parallel with the dry creek bed. But that one was more of a fire break than a road. And at the back of the cabin was the main trail that led up into the deep woods. And it wasn't uncommon to see a deer or other animals moving about on that trail at night. But this particular evening, it was clear and cold, and the moon shone down silver and shadowy. We both got settled down and shut off the lantern, talking for a while before we fell asleep, listening to a hoot owl off in the distance. But aside from him, the night was still. It was several hours later that something awakened me, and I lay listening for a few moments before I sat up on the bunk and looked around. And it was then that I saw it, a pale yellow light, but only for a moment before it vanished. And I thought it might have been the moon reflecting off something for a second. But as I watched and listened, looking out through the screen in different directions, I saw the light again a few hundred yards away. It wasn't a flashlight, but instead it was a lantern held at arm's length by someone who was skirting the edge of the camp, keeping to the tree line. And for a moment in the glow, I caught a glimpse of a man's face, a man with a long beard and hair, and a flash of red from the sleeve of a shirt he wore. It was a red plaid shirt. Just then, my friend awoke and asked me what I was doing and what was going on, and I whispered that someone was outside walking around with a lantern. "Look," I pointed as the figure moved away and disappeared into the shadows. Who do you think would be out here in the middle of the night?" she asked. And I couldn't come up with a good answer. "No one I know," I replied as we continued to watch. After a few moments, the light moved behind us, further up the trail and out of shadow, and finally disappeared altogether. That was freaky, my friend remarked, and I thought it was pretty odd myself. But after a while, we both fell asleep again, and when daylight came, we put on the coffee and enjoyed the fire and the beautiful fall morning, mentioning the spooky visitor in conversation, but odd things had happened to me in that campsite over the years, and I just added him to the long list of being chased by a wild pig one night, of hearing bagpipes coming from the cemetery, which was a very freaky thing. Turns out they were commemorating a gravestone for a Revolutionary War soldier and had a bagpiper. But didn't know about it, and so I'm just in the woods doing my own thing when I hear bagpipes. That was very unusual. And the wild pig was pretty interesting too. And one time I found inhuman footprints at the edge of the clearing in the soil along the trail. And not to forget, the night I woke up to see a big cat, a black panther, a black large cat, sitting on its haunches just a few feet away from me, studying the roundhouse with interest. The following day, there was a family dinner and a conversation with an uncle of mine, and I happened to mention the incident from the night before, and he just laughed. "Guess you've never heard of Jess Hill?" he asked, as I shook my head. "No, I haven't," I said, but I knew I was about to, because he was a good storyteller. "Well," he said, "Jess Hill lived up at the end of the holler behind the church. He was a hermit and kept to himself, and didn't go around people much, but when he did, well, it was always at night." "Did you get a good look at him?" he asked, and I said that I had only had a quick look, but that the man had had long gray hair and a beard. And then he asked me, "Bet he had on a red shirt, didn't he? And he was carrying a lantern?" I supposed I looked at him like he had sprouted horns. "Well, yeah, that's exactly right," I exclaimed as he laughed. "Now you can say you've just seen old Jess Hill. Thing is, though, Jess has been gone for about 50 years. I gave him another strange look and changed the subject. Added to the other things I'd experienced up at the roundhouse, it was quite a while before I stayed the night again up there. In fact, it was a couple of years. I've been wrong, and I guess you have been right. I've been wrong, and I guess you have been right. I've been gone so long, I can't see the morning light. But when I come walking down that road tonight, please turn on your porch light. Turn on your porch light. Turn on your porch light. All right. See you next time.